So I'm on my way home from work today, and this happens. This guy in this white pickup truck comes pulling up next to me, motioning to roll the window down as we're like just going through traffic on Stevens Creek Boulevard in Silicon Valley. And I do so. He doesn't look like he's road raging on me or whatever. And we kind of come to a stop in front of a stoplight, and he's all, "How do you like your Rivian?" And I said, "It's awesome." And have you ever done anything with it? I'm like, "Yeah, we were just in Moab a few weeks ago." And he was like, "Get out. What's the range?" And so I told him 350 miles. Which is a lie, but it highlights and brings us into how we talk about EVs and road trips. I'm going to try to do a video as concisely as possible. Monica has made me promise. This needs to be tight and a clear kind of list of questions of how EV road tripping works, because we've gotten a gajillion questions from friends, from family, from coworkers, from this guy in the white pickup truck. And we just went on an epic 4,500 mile road trip to Austin, Texas, and back again. And so we've got a little experience with this kind of stuff. First question we're going to answer is the question from my friend there in the white pickup truck. What is the range of our vehicle? Our Rivian R1T dual motor with the Max Pack has an official EPA rated range of 410 miles. Do we ever see anything close to that? Hell no. We have the all-terrain tire package that already drops things down to 355. That being said, what shows on our dashboard when we're actually at 100% state of charge is 369 EPA rated miles. I put that in quotes because EPA rated miles is like, I don't know, doing 60 miles an hour on the highway with the air conditioner off. It's really kind of a joke. When you sum up all of our driving from the entire 4,500 miles it took us to do this whole road trip, we had a 66.6% efficiency between miles actually traveled and EPA rated range used. That gives us a total battery pack capacity of 244 miles. Also, when we were in Moab, we went ahead and kind of took those driving segments off-road with tires aired down, going slowly, so more rolling resistance, but perhaps more efficient because we're going slower, etc., blah, blah, blah. Did a whole video on the analysis of this, by the way. Go click in the corner if you want to check it out. Our estimated maximum range off-road is about 260 miles. Kind of interesting that that's a little more than our road trip miles. But again, our road trip miles in this case, right, it was early April, it was kind of cold. We had several days of rain, and we were driving through Texas, New Mexico, Nevada. You know, they have very high speed limits there, and so that is not efficient at all. And so that's why I told him 350. You know, I kind of made a snap decision on what number to use. You know, if it was someone who seems to be generally EV savvy and is cross-shopping with on-road vehicles, Model X or something, I'm going to say 410. If they are instead cross-shopping with off-road vehicles, like a Cybertruck or an F-150 or whatever, I'm going to say more like either 369, 355, something like that. And realistically, I might just say 350, because that's a nice round number to stick in your brain and remember for me too, let alone the person I'm talking to. And as far as like, I don't know, just kind of a general, we're going to go on a day road trip to Napa or Point Reyes or drive toward Tahoe or that kind of thing, right? You know, in my mind, it's around 300 miles. Even that's a little optimistic if it's colder weather, but 300 seems like a truly practical single segment road trip range without removing, of course, safety buffers and that kind of stuff. You really have to look into all those pieces because it does impact how far you'll actually drive in your driving segments on a longer road trip. Our longest driving segment was 226 miles. This was leaving from home with almost 100% state of charge here in San Jose, California, and driving all the way to Buttonwillow down in the southern end of the Central Valley. It took us like 3.5 hours to do that, and so I'm happy my bladder survived that. Do you need more than 226 miles of range if that takes you 3.5 hours, right? You know, it's a good question. Do you need 400 miles of range? Well, yes, because the EPA rated miles are kind of a joke, right? you need that 400 to 500 mile EPA range to go ahead and factor down and have a solid driving range for each driving segment. Our average range for each road trip driving segment was only 140 miles. Another reason for this, for those of you who may not be EV people, for some reason you clicked on my video, and that's fine. Most electric vehicles, they charge the fastest from essentially 0 to 50% state of charge. After that, it starts tapering down. Sometimes very quickly, sometimes very slowly, depends on the vehicle, depends on the temperature outside to some extent. But basically that first half the battery. So if you're saving, say 20% of a safety buffer at the bottom, you essentially charge up like 30%-ish plus yay much as the curve starts tapering down. And so you're only using, in fact, the amount of battery on average we use for every driving segment was only 56% of our battery. That's kind of why you want a battery that's like providing twice the range that you would actually want for a single driving segment. And again, factoring in all the other possible handicaps like weather or going uphill or high speeds or all those kind of things, or towing a trailer, right? So while many EVs seem to be happy with 200-300 miles of range, I've never been happy with that at all, even in the 300s. I wanted an EV that could at least do 400, preferably 500. And so that's why I held out to get a max pack. The route for this epic road trip is shown here. We logged every segment of the entire journey in the application called Electrify. So it has the GPS coordinates, the speed travel, the battery state of charge, where we charged, where we drove, every little piece. Remember I was talking about Texas a little while ago? Let me scroll down here to April 1st. Yes, Monday, April Fool's Day. And we had some crazy, look at this, average speed 81 miles an hour, average speed 79 miles an hour. Ignore this max speed 191. That's not possible. But yeah, so some of those speed limits down in Texas are outrageous. And so just really briefly at first, our general plan, the genesis for this whole thing was to go see the eclipse, right? We had seen the previous eclipse in 2017, and it was absolute.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
I hope the contrails in the GoPro.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Look at that! Look at it!
So since 2017, we haven't been planning necessarily, but we've been expecting and like, you know, we're going to go to the next eclipse. So we looked it up, and like the next one's in 2024. That's in so long. So here we go. It's 2024. The eclipse is rolling through from Mexico through Texas and all the way up to Newfoundland or so. So we decided on Texas. My company has offices in Austin, Texas. Monica can work from anywhere these days post-COVID. And so we decided go out there on the first weekend, work there for a week, see the eclipse on Monday, and drive our way home. Also, Monica said she really wanted to see White Sands, New Mexico, and I really wanted to go to Moab. So there were a couple other anchors on this trip. To try to save time on the initial drive out there, it was more than you could do in 2 days, realistically, especially an electric vehicle. So we decided on 3 days, but to pad that out a little bit and to give us as much time as possible in White Sands, on actually the Friday the night before, Friday evening, as soon as traffic died down after dinner, we did an initial blitz down to Bakersfield. The next morning then, we had our first true long road tripping day, and this was our longest road trip day. We went all the way to Lordsburg, New Mexico, from right here on down to the LA Basin, all the way on out to, is it here? Yeah, this is Lordsburg, New Mexico right here. There we go. Spent the night in Lordsburg, got there like midnight or so. We learned some lessons about time zone changes and which of our apps and navigation software systems could handle the time zone change properly. Rivian did not at that time, but we have mentioned it to the head of software development at Rivian, and he went, oh yeah, it's a good point, so maybe we'll get a fix someday. Then we went to Las Cruces, hit a Tesla charger there, charged up, went to White Sands, and basically burned that whole day. I think it was Easter Sunday, actually, checking out White Sands. Spent the night there in Las Cruces. The next day was another long road trip day coming across Texas, all the way from here, rolling all the way on into Austin. Again, we spent the week in Austin, and then we actually went out to our friend's ranch. Thank you, Juliet and Chris. That was awesome. Thank you for hosting us over at your ranch in Lampasas.
So nice. I've never seen something like this. Look at that. 3, 2, 1.
Yeah!
amazing to see the eclipse. That was absolutely incredible. And as soon as the eclipse was over there at like 1:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Monday, we then went blitzing out towards Amarillo, was kind of where we were aiming for to try to get to. The next day was the most beautiful segment of our road trip, rolling through here up through New Mexico into Colorado, over the Continental Divide into Salida, over the mountains. We hit the highest elevation our vehicle. That's one of the funny things about Rivian. It has a little spot in the nerd display where it says the highest elevation you've ever achieved and the lowest elevation. Well, we've now set the highest at 11,000 feet going past the Monarch Ski Resort here in Colorado and then down to Grand Junction. The next day from Grand Junction, we then just zipped down into Moab, charged up the Tesla charger there, spent 3 days exploring around Moab, basically every day going out and exploring, spending the night camping, coming back, charging in central Moab, and back again. And Moab's fantastic that way because you have all these great parks without really necessarily multi-day. I mean, you can turn them into multi-day drives if you really want to, but you don't have to. And so you can totally, easy as pie, charge every day if you need to and just explore all around Canyonlands and Arches and the whole area. So that was awesome. That was fantastic. Then we had another long road trip day going from, actually we spent the night out in a ghost town here north of Thompson Springs, Sago. We spent the night in Sago, the Sago ghost town, went over to West Wendover. Amazingly, the salt flats were open. We did not expect it to be drivable. The last time we were there, in fact, it was on our trip to go visit the TFL guys over in Denver, Colorado. It was a lake, and so we were not expecting it to be drivable, but it was. And this was, I mean, it was nothing. We didn't like do anything crazy, but it was a bucket list thing to go drive on the Bonneville salt flats. That was awesome. And we charged up in Wendover, and then we rolled over to Battle Mountain and spent the night there. We were hoping on our final day to go explore Dixie Valley. That did not work out because when we woke up in the morning, it was pouring rain. And as we were discussing what we wanted to do...
Is it snowing?
It's snowing.
snowing.
It is snowing.
Yeah.
It's 39 outside.
Wow.
Oh my God. What are we doing? What are we doing?
It is literally snowing. You can see it. It's snowing. To my face. Ah, come on. Oh.
Holy shit. Oh my God.
That plan went out the window. So we went over to Lovelock, we got a charge, got some nice breakfast, and rolled back to Truckee, and then on home, charged up in Vallejo, and eventually wound our way up back down into San Jose, California. That was the route of our amazing, epic road trip. So how do we plan out this route? And in fact, Monica's brother asked us this exact question, kind of saying, I can't imagine how long it took to plan out all your stops, all the motels and chargers, and I just don't have time for that. Well, newsflash, everyone, you don't need the time to plan it out. You don't have to plan it out pretty much at all. Basically, you know, we had the overall route, and we used a better route planner to be able to kind of figure out how long it would take to get places with charge stops in between. And a better route planner, it's actually owned by Rivian, but it's absolutely agnostic. You can go ahead and put in whatever EV you have, and modify it for whether you prefer longer stops or shorter stops, you know, what your battery percentage, you know, safety levels are that you prefer, what chargers and networks you prefer, what speed you go, all that stuff. You program in, you go ahead and set up your route on where you want to go and your start state of charge, and you click plan. And there we go, voila. It goes ahead and plots out what's the fastest way to get there. And so I have it set actually to leave San Jose at 7 a.m. And so we would basically use this to kind of figure out, well, whereabouts are we going to be towards the end of the day, right? That's the important thing to figure out. And once you kind of figure out how your day segments are going to go, what your destination is, well, you could use this plan and execute it in detail. And some people do that. We did not. Essentially what we did is we got into the vehicle and we go ahead and type in our destination and we just let it drive.
So you can just type in your destination or use Alexa or what you want to, or you just pick it off the map, right? Let's go ahead and zoom in. Here's Lordsburg, New Mexico right here. Here's the EA station. So just doing go, I'm going to do details. And this allows us to go into the settings and say, what's your preferred range upon arrival. Let's go ahead and set, say 10%. Preferred networks, whether we have an adapter or not, that kind of stuff. Let's go ahead and use those settings always. It'll calculate it out. 6 charging stops added, adapter needed. We can actually go ahead and see the list here if we really want to, right? We can see we stop at Coalinga, Santa Clarita. We stop at the Rivian Adventure Network here in Quartzsite. Here, when we arrive there, we'll have 62 miles of extra range. We will charge there for just 18 minutes, and then we will keep rocking along. So then you just click go. So really, it's actually super easy. You can geek out about it and kind of strategize everything out, or you can just type in your destination to just let it figure it out.
How much did it cost? We get that question a lot. This is the actual dollar amount that hit our credit card and the actual amount of electrons we pumped into the vehicle from every location, every day, every stop along the way. And so overall, we spent $904.56 to put in almost 2.6 megawatts of power, and the overall cost per kilowatt was 35 cents. Now, you can either see this as a good number or a bad number. Here in California, we pay our electricity rates based upon the time of day that the electricity is delivered, right? So the rates change based upon what time of day it is. And so of those different time buckets, the cheapest window of time is from midnight to 3 p.m. And that cheapest electricity rate for 100% green energy, for what it's worth, is 35 cents. And so essentially, we had the same cost on the road trip versus at home. So, I mean, that's awesome, right? Well, there's a couple of provisos onto this. Number one, in talking to our friends and coworkers over in Austin, Texas, they were like, well, yeah, at home, we pay like 8, 9, 10 cents a kilowatt. Oh my God, that is so nice. Now you can make jokes about the reliability of the Texas power grid, but also the reason why it costs 35 cents a kilowatt here in California is because PG&E goes and lights mountain towns on fire every few years. And so you got to pay for one way or the other. Another way to look at this is what was the actual cost when we paid for power, because there was free level 1 charging here. When we were in Austin, all of this was free level 2 at the hotel, etc. So it's kind of not a fair number. And the overall road trip, yes, great, but when we paid for power, what was the average price we paid? And as a reminder, we were using Tesla, we were using Electrify America, we were using Rivian Adventure Network, and for both Electrify America and Tesla, we had memberships, and that brings the prices down substantially, and it's totally worth it. It saved us a ton of money. So when we actually paid for charging, that actually becomes 38 cents per kilowatt. So not quite as really a nice number, but still pretty damn good, honestly, in the grand scheme of things. When you don't have a membership, generally at DC fast chargers, we see in the 40s, maybe even 50 or 60 cents per kilowatt. And the funny thing is we saw the same price throughout our road trip. There was basically no difference between California, all the states we went through, Texas. DC fast charging was about the same in spite of the huge difference in home electricity prices. So what like the wholesale corporate electricity price is in the different locations, I don't really know. It's kind of an interesting question. Are all the charging companies just making bank in Texas, but then breaking even in California? It's kind of weird. I don't know. How far were we able to drive between charges, and how long did it take to charge? We already talked about a little bit of that earlier, but let's go ahead and sum things up again. And first off, just the overall summing here. We drove 4,274 miles, excluding Austin, by the way. Just kind of left that out completely. That took 4,711 minutes to drive. And it took 4,641 minutes to charge. Literally, we spent 50% of our time charging. But again, that's not rational. We had overnight level 1 charging, like 600 minutes here at Battle Mountain and that kind of stuff. So let's go ahead and try to clean this up. And I want to talk about one of the strategies that we had as well when charging. The best way to not waste time charging is to not charge when you could be driving. So our technique was basically, we would arrive into a town, we would already pre-plan out a motel with either a level 2 charger or a fast charger nearby, right? And so I would drop Monica off at the motel with her overnight bag. She would do the check-in process. She would find the room. She would get settled, message me the room number. I would then spend yay long 20, 30 minutes charging and then come find her. And the same thing the next morning often, I would bounce up, and especially if it was a fast charger right nearby, like here in Buttonwillow, literally we were just like the other side of the parking lot. So I woke up and just threw on some clothes, ran over there, plugged in, came back, took a shower, and kind of got ready. Then we walked over to Starbucks and got some coffee and a little bit of breakfast. And then we walked over to the car. And at that point, we had a full battery. So try your best to charge when you can't be driving, so that on your actual road trips, you essentially get a free 3-4 hours of driving, a free 300-400 miles of range, so that pads out your numbers substantially. So summing all this up, again, we're throwing out the level 1 stuff, the level 2 stuff. We're throwing out the check-in and check-outs at various hotels. We throw out all of Austin. We throw out all of Moab, because essentially that was driving slowly. So lots of driving minutes, but only basically one charge almost per day, and not a lot of miles traveled. So it's not really a good representation of the road trip. You want to know, what was the road trip experience like in isolation from everything else, as much as we can? And so when we sum everything up down at the end, we're looking at 3,888 miles traveled in our road trip segments. That took 3,622 minutes, which is actually an average miles per hour, an average of about 65 miles per hour, which I would call pretty damn good, actually. Our average driving segment length was 140 miles, and our average driving segment duration was 2 hours and 10 minutes. Now, our average stop time was actually over 40 minutes, 40 and a half minutes, which when you do all the math out, essentially we spent 18% of our time on the overall road trip charging. Now, that begs a lot of questions. First one is how low can you drive that if you were in a gas vehicle? I mean, it's not just gas fuel stops. You've got to stop for food. You've got to stop for restroom breaks and stuff. Maybe 5% is a ballpark guess. And so essentially, we're wasting 10 to 15% of our overall road trip efficiency by driving an EV versus an equivalent gasoline vehicle. Now, that being said, the Rivian is a brick. It's not efficient, doesn't charge the fastest. It has a huge battery that just takes time to put power into. With a much more efficient or faster charging EV, or both, that number would be substantially better. But nonetheless, for an EV, it's not going to be as efficient as a gasoline vehicle. That's just the bottom line. That being said, 5, 10, 15%, we were still able to knock down 700-800 mile days. So I would call it still pretty darn good. Could it have been better, however? This was our first real long distance EV road trip, and we were being a little conservative as we were going through the no man's lands of northern Texas or eastern New Mexico and that kind of fun stuff. So if you do the math in this 140 miles, remember we talked earlier about how our overall efficiency was only 66.6%. So you go ahead and do the math on that, and essentially we were utilizing an average of only 56% of our battery capacity. So let's actually go to a different spreadsheet. This is from a different video where we actually looked at what the charge curve looks like for the Rivian R1T dual motor max pack, all the way from under 10% to over 80%. And if we go from, say, 10% to 20%, that takes less than 5 minutes. If you go from 70% to 80%, well, that takes almost 9 minutes. And so while we were showing up at chargers with a state of charge of a conservative, let's say average 20% state of charge and somewhere in that ballpark, if we had pushed that down towards 10%, well, we would have saved like 4 minutes for every single charge stop. That would have saved us essentially 10% off our average stop time. So with more confidence, with better infrastructure, can this be driven down lower with our Rivian? Yes, absolutely. And again, if you have a faster charging EV or a more efficient EV, this will also be substantially better. So this is a fun question that's come up. Would driving slower have been better? And did we ever drive slower for any particular reason? The answer is no for both counts. Number one, we were always driving as fast as we wanted to. And this is why. Because basically, Again, non-EV owners might not realize this, but chargers are so fast these days, even for the Rivian that only does 200 kilowatts. 200 kilowatts is a lot of power. Like if I go and drive as fast as I can, which is 110 miles an hour, 114, something like that, whatever the limit is for the vehicle, I'm not burning 200 kilowatts. It's just not possible. And so anytime you can make up by being a little less efficient, you will put more power in at your next charging stop from that time you save. So always go as fast as you're comfortable to be optimal and save time as much as you can. That being said, this data is from a Better Route Planner, and you can go ahead and set in an ABRP essentially what percent of the speed limit you expect to drive. So at 100%, we're at 75 hours. We spend almost 60 hours driving and 14 hours charging. But basically, as you go slower and try to be more efficient, your total time goes up. Your driving time also goes up, but your charging time goes down, right? It kind of makes sense when you actually think about it. Your charging time goes down. So your ratio of driving to charging gets better and better, but your overall transit time gets worse and worse. And as you go faster and faster, the total transit time gets lower and lower. They're basically, I mean, there may be some limit way up there, but you know, with 115% already going faster than 110%, you know, any practical speed for cruising on a road trip, you're fine going as fast as you want to. So we were in Green River waiting to charge up. And in fact, the chargers were taken up by this testing team from Chevy. They had 3 Silverados, pre-production Silverados, and they were hogging up all the chargers, just packing in those gigantic 200 plus kilowatt hour batteries. And while we were waiting, this lady pulls up in her 4Runner. She was like, "Hey, you know, do you mind if I ask you a question? Like, so what does it cost really for an EV?" And it's a damn good question. And you can get very pedantic about all sorts of technicalities and stuff. But the simple answer I told her, and the simple answer I tell people, is that between gasoline at the pump and electricity at the pump, at a DC fast charger, a public DC fast charger, it costs about the same. It truly does. Maybe a little bit different in different places, different types, different vehicles, etc., blah, 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 technicalities. As far as like a simple answer to tell someone in a parking lot, they're about the same price. Now, the funny thing is that DC fast charging, from what we found, we saw the same prices all across our road trip. But gasoline was half the price in Texas as it was in California. $7.29 for premium. $6.89 for regular. Welcome to Truckee, California. They're right here. Oh, we might have a Rivian congestion problem. Right? So that's why it gets complicated. And then for electricity, if you're charging at home, it can be significantly cheaper, especially if you live in Texas. Now let's go ahead and look at the numbers here on what it actually costs us and how it compares. And I truly think it's important to compare against an equivalent vehicle. You know, the EVs do have pros, but they have cons. They have handicaps that are challenges for them, range and charging speed and stuff. Well, gasoline vehicles, they have pros and cons. One of their cons is if you put a big engine in it to go fast as an EV, you're going to have shitty gas mileage 24/7 every mile that you drive. And that's just what life is like with a gasoline engine. So I don't want to compare our Rivian R1T that does 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds with some 4Runner or Tacoma or F-250 diesel dually. It just does not matter at all. If you want the amazing fun to drive a truck that goes just insanely fast.
So my understanding is basically all you do, it's really simple. You just press the brake pedal, you press the gas pedal all the way down, and you release the brake pedal.
Okay.
Well, then you got to pay for it. And so a 2024 F-150 Raptor R has an over 700 horsepower supercharged engine, which gets 15 miles per gallon. Then you can make some comparisons about how it costs to do the road trip. So going back to our top of the line numbers, these numbers come from the Rivian, from the entire road trip. All right, we have made it home. 4,520.1 miles
1.85 miles per kilowatt and a whopping almost 2.5 megawatts of power used.
And it cost us $904, as mentioned before. So we go ahead and math that out. With 15 miles per gallon, the Raptor R would need to buy 301 gallons of gasoline. Now at California pricing, that would cost almost $1,600. Texas pricing, almost down to $1,100. How does that compare to 904? Well, you know, either you're kind of almost close to 2 to 1 to just being, you know, a bit cheaper. And here for giggles is just the mean between the two. I mean, I guess I could have looked up the average price of gas today for all of America, but I figure California is expensive pricing and then Texas is cheap pricing, and the middle in between is kind of a reasonable average. So the other way to do the math is to go ahead and say, well, okay, we have $904. How much gasoline can we buy for $904, right? So we could buy 173.52 gallons of gas in California. And so what miles per gallon would our vehicle need to be to go ahead and drive 4,520 miles? And the answer is 26 miles per gallon. Can you think of a truck that gets 26 miles per gallon that can go to 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds? I don't think such a thing exists, realistically. In Texas, the equivalent is roughly 19 miles per gallon. And then again, a happy medium is about 22.44 miles per gallon. So that's kind of how the comparison maths out between the Rivian R1T and relatively equivalent vehicles. And what was the charging experience like? Well, so we did have one situation where we had some significant issues, and I'll get to that story in just a little bit. But most of our charging stops were Tesla, because just before this road, like 2 days before, we got an adapter that allowed us to use the Tesla superchargers, and that was an absolute game changer. So most of our stops were Tesla. After that, the significant minority were EA, and then we had a handful of Rivian chargers. Rivians were fine, A-OK, 100%, but like the Tesla chargers, there are no services, right? And so that's a bit of a problem. You know, there was nothing around except for like a little town supermarket. And you go in and you beg for a bathroom break and you get directed to go back behind the meat counter, back behind the big meat locker to the employee bathroom next to the bandsaw, and go use that restroom, right? That's one of the big issues with those types of chargers. There was a couple we hit. In Amarillo, Texas, the Tesla supercharger was part of like a big mega truck stop with RV parking spaces and a big food court area and a Wendy's and, again, diesel for the trucks and just all sorts of infrastructure. That was fantastic. I've heard that chargers are going in at like all of the Loves and the Flying J's and stuff. That is fantastic. That is the paradigm we need. And Lord knows why it's taken so long, right? If I'm trapped there for an average of 40 minutes, sell me something, guys. I mean, that's such a no-brainer. Anyway, let's talk about EA. So the EA chargers at Walmart, I would say, were in better condition than the ones not at Walmart, for what it's worth. And at a Walmart, you're basically guaranteed a nice bathroom. You can go ahead and do some quick shopping if you need to. There were often restaurants around or that kind of thing, but the Walmart provided like a basic level of service, which was really appreciated. That being said, so we had a funny incident in Junction, Texas. In Junction, Texas, let me go ahead and pull it up on the map. Oh, here we go. It's right here. I'm having flashbacks. So middle of nowhere, 2 to 3 hours west of Austin, Texas. We go pull off the freeway here, and not even kind of the main part of town, next to this little, there's a motel right here. It's not telling us who it is, but there's a motel right here. And so for the EA stations, a lot of them basically are 4 chargers. Each charger has 2 handles. The handles are redundant. You can't use both at the same time. 2 of the chargers are 350 kilowatts. One is 150, and one is a 150 with a single handle and then one Chatamo handle for the old Nissan Leafs. So basically everybody uses the first 3 and ignores the Nissan Leaf one almost entirely. So we go pull in, plug into the 350, of course. We charge for like 60 seconds and boo, it dies. Try to restart the charge and the charger's dead. Nothing coming out of it. We can't talk to it. Well, frack. We go to the next charger. It's also dead. Nothing. We go to, I think it was the double handle 150. We actually got it to charge slightly, like a few kilowatts, but after a minute or two, it was not speeding up, so we killed that too. We then went over to the slow charger that nobody uses, the Chatamo charger. So maybe it's not a good sign for Electrify America charger when there's a bird's nest that's been built up behind the charger plug. Maybe not a good sign. Maybe not a good sign. Absolutely boggles. Oh, they have a pool. I just turned on satellite view for giggles. So we went ahead and essentially went back through all the charging handles to try to find one that would try to work. And we did find one that eventually worked and gave us a decent charge, and we got the hell out of there as fast as we could. Did we actually call the 1-800 number to ask for a reset on the chargers? No, we did not. And one of the reasons why is that I'm an IT professional. And I cannot imagine what sort of bullshit MS-DOS, Novell networking, janky solution they have where the people on the end of the phone can reset a charger, but their monitoring system doesn't know the charger is wedged. Like, how is that even possible? I do not believe in the slightest that calling them does anything besides waste your time. It is so bad. EA is such a freaking joke. But when we were driving back out of town and we were rolling through this little town of Junction, Texas, and came across the freeway, and over here there's like a Shell station. I think it's right here. I think it's the Shell station. We actually saw construction going on right there, installing some new Shell recharge chargers. So improvement is coming. Last but not least, what was our experience like? You know, what did it feel like? What was it like to go on an EV, extended, very long EV road trip? It was awesome. It was fantastic. It was relaxing in a way that gasoline road trips aren't. And the reason why, we pondered this a whole bunch. The reason why I think is that when you're on a gasoline road trip, every minute that you are not on the highway is a minute later that you're going to get to your destination. It is a 100% loss. And so you are pumping fuel as fast as you can, you're eating food as fast as you can, you're peeing as fast as you can, you are just rush as fast as you can, because every minute is 100% wasted. In an EV, it's not like that. You know, if you pull in and you're charging, and we did this several times, we were making coffee, we were going to the bathroom, we went and had a sit-down lunch. And maybe we only needed 25 minutes of charging to get to the next charger, but instead we took 40 minutes or 45 minutes. Was that wasted time? No, because the vehicle keeps charging. And so the longer you charge, what that means is in the next driving segment, I could just drive faster and make time. Or at the next charging stop, I could charge less and save time. Also, when driving along, if I'm getting stuck behind some slow traffic, well, EVs are much more efficient when they drive slower. So while you're still losing some time, essentially at the next charging stop, you'll be able to charge less. And so, like, everything that kind of goes wrong also pays forward. And so you can just kind of chill out a little bit. In addition, you have a regimented brake system. We would drive for 2 to 3 hours and we would recharge for an average of 40 minutes. Swap drivers, go to the bathroom. Monica would slide out the gear tunnel and whoop out her kitchen there and make a coffee and stuff. And that was a way to make friends. When we did that, people would come running over and go, "What the hell? What is that? That's amazing." It was hilarious. So the combination of those two things really made it a relaxing, enjoyable experience where we could still knock down 700 to 800 miles per day if we needed to. But it just wasn't as much of a grind. It was so pleasant and enjoyable. It was fantastic. Like when we were in our final legs coming across Nevada back towards California, You know, it was like the end of Thelma and Louise. Like what if we just keep going? Like, how long until they fire us? Or I guess actually that's also from not Idiocracy. It's from the Office Space, right? From Office Space. How long until they fire them? How long can we just keep going if we just kept going? It was such a nice experience. Another funny thing about an EV road trip. I mean, road trips already, they take you across America and you see the breadth of America, totally unlike when you just fly to a destination, right? And that's cool. I really enjoy that. EV road trips take it to the next level because unless you want to waste an incredible amount of time, you eat wherever it is near a charger. And currently there are few enough chargers that it's not like you can just pick and choose and eat wherever you want to. I mean, normally, like you go to In-N-Out Burger or whatever your favorite national food chain is, and you stay in your bubble, right? And you get gas across the street or wherever. With EVs, no. You know, we were going to Lovelock, Nevada. We were going to Lovelock, Nevada. We pull into the EA charger in the Safeway first thing in the morning on the Sunday morning, the last day of our road trip. There was this cute little diner. We went in there and we had a great breakfast with like eggs and these elk sausages and French toast. And we chatted with the hostess, and she had lived in Lovelock for a long time. It gets you out of your bubble, right? And that's fantastic because on this road trip, unlike what you would probably expect from the comment sections of every EV related video on YouTube or article in the news, whatever, we got absolutely zero EV hate. We got absolutely zero Californian hate. We got absolutely zero Tesla hate for our taking 2 charging stalls at the Tesla chargers. Everybody was curious. Everybody was friendly. You know, if you get out of your bubble and go out and visit people where they live and work across America, they're awesome. And they are welcoming, and they are happy to have you. Get out of your bubble, people. Go experience America. Go have a road trip.